total number of miles she travelled, but largely due to the invention of the jet engine, she's circumnavigated the globe so many times, usually by air, sometimes in her beloved Britannia. Britannia, of course, is now docked not far from where we're looking at now in the docks at Leith. But flying was always part of being monarch. She didn't particularly like flying. It's something she had to do. She always liked to have a St. Christopher's medallion on board whichever aircraft she was flying.
Really?
Yeah, it was one of the things whenever they were chartering a plane, because unlike most heads of state around the world who had sort of Air Force One or whatever, the Queen didn't have her own long distance jumbo jet or anything, and whenever she was travelling, the crew always told make sure it was a St. Christopher's medallion.
Let's talk of King Charles for a moment as well, because while this is all taking place, he is in Northern Ireland. He has already travelled. His schedule over the last few days, he's almost 74 years old himself, isn't he?
Yeah, 75 next year. He got up this morning at Holyrood House in Edinburgh, spent the day in Northern Ireland, and is now like the C-17 is on his way to London. Has very consciously wanted to take the new reign around the kingdom to show what monarchy is all about, really. Continuity, stability, unity. That's the Secretary of State of Scotland and the First Minister preparing to bid farewell. The First Minister very wisely holding on to her hat, given the size of the engines there. As the First Minister, of course, who read the lesson yesterday at St. Giles's in that fabulous service.
The Lord Lieutenant, City of Edinburgh there, Robert Aldridge.
Lord Lieutenants have played a very key role in all these events in recent days. The Queen's representative in all her counties. They've all known her, they've all known the royal family very well. I think they'll be particularly will be feeling her loss. Everywhere she went, the first person she'd usually meet in any county would be the Lord Lieutenant.
And you have to remember the guard there, the people, they will have known her for year after year after year, won't they? That was their role, and she had every week, every year, the week, the Holyrood week. It will be very poignant for them too, won't it?
It will, and whenever she was at Balmoral, there was always a guard often from the Royal Regiment of Scotland or from other regiments would be up there as not wasn't a great deal of ceremonial, but they were always very proud to play a part. I think anyone who's served in uniform in any of the armed forces will feel that extra special connection, because you did serve Queen in country, and once again now King in country.
My mum was brought up north east of Scotland, and my granddad was in the police force. So when we saw Ballater, the local towns of Aboyne and Kincardine O'Neill, the three sort of groups of police from the three towns would be asked to come along when the royal family were in residence, especially when they were having picnics and things. And my mum's got photos of my granddad with them all in uniform, sort of very discreetly, but basically looking after the royal family as they had their picnics. And he'd come back and tell my mum and my aunt about a very young version of Anne and Charles running around having a picnic. So I think, like we've said, this connection to family life that the locals, I think, really respected, and I think that warmth was there because they respect the royal family, but they saw them as a family as well in the community, and that's an incredible thing to be part of.
preparations being made on board still on the flight deck before this huge Globemaster can take off. When it lands in London at about 6:30, 7 o'clock this evening, there will be it will be taken, the cortege, another cortege, which will travel from RAF Northolt. That's the oldest RAF base, I think, in the UK.
It's home to what used to be called the Queen's Flight, now 32 Royal Squadron, and the RAF are waiting there in some numbers. There'll be obviously a proper welcome, and then the journey will begin along the A40. I'm afraid it's not as handsome as what we're looking at now, into West London, and then through down Park Lane and through very familiar landmarks back to Buckingham Palace for what will be the Queen's last night in our palace.
And that for the family will really be a very special moment, no doubt, because that will be her last night at Buckingham Palace. After that, her coffin will be moved to Westminster Hall, the Royal State, and then the funeral on Monday. So the last private 24 hours or so that the family will have.
Yes, it will be. It is rather wonderful that the events of the last few days have taken her to so many of her residences from Balmoral to the Palace of Holyrood House. I was talking to some members of the royal household today who were reminiscing just what a lovely atmosphere there is at Holyrood House. It's quite intimate. I mean, it looks very grand. Obviously, it's a palace. It's very historic, but there is a sort of intimacy there, and whenever the royal family are in residence there, everybody loves it. And so from there back to Buckingham Palace, and ultimately to Windsor Castle, which is the seat of the House of Windsor, where her parents lie, where Prince Philip lies. But that's obviously for Monday. Today is a return and a preparation for the great state elements of this period of mourning.
But can we expect the family members, like the new Prince of Wales, Princess of Wales, can we expect them to all gather tonight at Buckingham Palace? The Queen's coffin is going to the bowroom, isn't it?
The coffin will rest in the bowroom. I'm quite sure they'll all be coming to pay their respects, and they'll obviously be all gathering tomorrow for the procession. And it's a sort of procession like no other, because normally we think of processions down the Mall and bands playing and a great amount of spectacle and pageantry, but there will be, despite the grandeur of it, despite the history and obviously all that it represents, it will be a family. And tomorrow I would expect to see, possibly for the first time, a lot of family members who we haven't seen thus far. I mean, the Queen was extremely close for example, to her niece and nephew, former Viscount Linley, now Earl of Snowdon, and Lady Sarah Chatto. They were devoted to her. They'd spend a lot of time with her. They will be there. A lot of the people who, from her mother's side of the family, I would expect to see them processing as well. And of course the staff, who are just utterly devoted. I think we forget at a time like this that of course members of her family are mourning their mother, but I mean there are a lot of people. There were some very emotional scenes, I'm told, at Balmoral as she left on Sunday morning. There's a real sense of losing someone to whom, I mean, love is the word, I'm afraid. It's love.
Well, the stairs have been taken up there. The band stands ready. The final salute will take place before one verse of the national anthem. The huge aircraft taxiing very slowly towards the runway. So it's an aircraft that's been used in Ukraine. Most recently, it's been used in those evacuations from Afghanistan, from Kabul last year. It's also been used to repatriate the bodies of British servicemen and women in years past.
It plays a key role. It's a reminder that all the military elements in what we've been seeing, the troops involved, the troops we're going to see in London later on and tomorrow, they all perform frontline roles. These ceremonial elements are something they take very seriously. They're very proud of them, but they're not what they're really there for.
So as the sun goes down over Edinburgh, Britain's longest reigning monarch leaves Scotland for the last time, a country she loved so deeply. The flight will take an hour. We will be back on BBC One as it lands at RAF Northolt, just west of London. Hugh Edwards will